This is going to be a brief video just documenting the controls and the basic game mechanics of Eon. So when you start the game, you're greeted with this kind of thing. It's basically a demo with a 4-option menu. This quits. This question mark shows you the controls, and this toggles full screen mode, and this play button plays the game. Let's look at the controls interface real quick. So this just shows you in a non-interactive way kind of an overview of how you play the game on a very basic level, while showing you what buttons, what key presses are being used to do those things. You can use a gamepad, you can use a keyboard, you can use a mouse. I personally prefer mouse because it's the fastest way to get around, and the speed really matters in this game. And another thing it's demonstrating here is one way to pass the level is to completely fill the board with your color. Your color is yellow, and your opponents will often be orange or cyan or green, but you're always yellow. And the pink square there is your cursor, and these green flashing circles indicate your scheduled plans. So when it's planning to take tiles, there are these green circles. When it plans to do a sacrifice, you'll see a red circle. For takes, you use your left mouse button. For sacrifices, you use your right mouse button. And then you just move your mouse around to move the cursor. It's a very click and drag style of gameplay. It's the same thing with the keyboard and the gamepad. Just instead of dragging, you're using like the WASD keys or the arrow keys or the directional pad. And then spacebar is for taking, enter is for sacrificing, and X and Y on the gamepad. You just hold them down and move the cursor around. It's very important to plan ahead. You want to be able to schedule more than one move at a time. And that's indicated here by those green flashing circles. So let's go to actually play a game. So these black tiles, they're obstacles. You can't take them, but you can kind of convert them into your own by sacrificing next to them. These dark purple tiles with stars over them, those are vacant, and they are open to be taken. The reason why they have stars over them is right now I'm absent from the board, so every vacant space is available to me. Whenever I'm in the board, whenever I have any kind of tile that's yellow, like I occupy something, then I can only expand into adjacent tiles. I can't go anywhere. I'm limited. And the stars are there to indicate when you're in the special Genesis condition where everything's available to you. So I'm going to plan my first move, and my opponent will do the same thing. Okay. Now, since I'm surrounded by obstacles, I can't take anything. So if I try to take that, or that, or that, any of these things, I just get these green circles and red flashes with a knocking sound. And that's basically what happens when your plans fail to execute. The tile flashes red, you hear a knocking sound, and you don't make any progress. What I can do here is sacrifice, and when I sacrifice, I will convert these 4 adjacent obstacles into my own tiles. So they'll turn yellow, but this one in the middle will become vacant. Now these arrows that are animated here, they're telling me that I can take this vacant tile, and I can take it because it's next to mine. I'm adjacent to it. I can't take these, I can't take these, I can't take any of these on the board. Now if I try to make a whole lot of plans and get ahead of the game, you'll notice the screen flashes and kind of a klaxon sound occurs, like that. That's just to prevent you, especially like new players, to prevent you from like just going crazy and getting way ahead of the gameplay, because it can be very confusing if you don't understand how the game works. As the levels progress, the depth of that cue before the alert sounds gets deeper, so you can make longer and longer schedules planning ahead. But in the early levels, it's pretty shallow, and it's pretty easy to make that go off. But it's relatively harmless. It just throws away your excess plans. So what I can do now is sacrifice, and I'm going to do that. I can also take. Actually, instead I'm going to take. So right now, I'm adjacent to blue, and this arrow here that's blue is telling me that blue could expand into my yellow spot here. Basically, the tile under my cursor right now is actually threatened. But since the level it's level 0, so it's an easy level, and the AI is programmed to be very patient and very cooperative, like friendly, to help you learn the game. So it's not taking that opportunity. Normally it would. But this is a good opportunity to learn another part of the rules. Even though this is adjacent to me, notice that I don't have a yellow... Here we go. Now I have a yellow arrow. I was going to say that I couldn't expand to the right, but the AI took the opportunity finally. So now I can actually expand to the right because I had 2 tiles. See how I can't expand to the right now? I'm not allowed to. But if I go here first, I can. And I can go there and there. The rule is you need to have 2 adjacent in order to take an adjacent color. So I can take this blue one because I have 3 over here. I can still take this blue one because I have 2 over here. Now if blue expands into here, then I wouldn't be able to expand into it because of this tile, but I would be able to expand because of this one, because there's 2 on this side. And see how the yellow arrow there indicates down? That's telling me that from this direction, I have enough leverage to take this tile. If I didn't have this tile here, then this arrow wouldn't be showing that I wouldn't be able to go there. So I'm going to take it, and now I can go here, and that's indicated by that yellow arrow that's animated. Now this isn't really how you're expected to play. You're supposed to be planning ahead and keeping things going. So I'm going to, instead of doing this hunt and peck while I explain things, I'm going to just click and drag. I'm going to do a left click and take all the way across. I'm going to do it here, and here, and here. Now I was able to do that because I had 2 or more adjacent tiles of my color to overpower the neighboring blue tile. And you can do that in sequences. And this is basically the core mechanic of the game, is just fulfill the 2 or more adjacent tiles requirement and expand your front. That is one way to fill the board, and filling all the tiles is a way to pass the level. Now that's actually a challenging thing to do because of what just happened there. Now when you take your opponent's last tile, and it's not the last tile for the board, this occurs, and it's called vanishing. So my opponent is still in the level. They're just not present on the board. And because I vanished them, all of the vacant tiles became obstacles. And it's kind of a governing technique to give the player that was vanished another opportunity to make like a comeback. Because this is a permadeath kind of game. Once you get eliminated from the level, the game's over. You have to start over from level 0. So now that I had to sacrifice just to create openings and make progress, because I have to basically clear out these obstacles here, or I need to eliminate my opponent. But to eliminate my opponent, they have to be on the board. So I had to do a sacrifice. There was no option other than quitting the game. And that's the other way to pass a level. So instead of trying to occupy all the tiles, I did a sacrifice adjacent to my opponent. All of my opponent's remaining tiles were basically destroyed by my sacrifice. And that's the easier way to pass a level. It's the preferred way, really. Taking over all the tiles and filling the board is challenging, but it is kind of like the more peaceful way of passing a level, if you can call it that. Now I'm just going to play a little bit and kind of demonstrate how gameplay works when you're not trying to show how things work. This is worth mentioning. Since I vanished my opponent, and there's only one opponent, in this situation, when I sacrifice myself, it's going to create a column of open spaces. And all I have to do is wait for my opponent to re-enter the board in that column, and then make a sacrifice, and they'll be eliminated. It's kind of like a trap. That pattern occurs somewhat often, but it's not always so easy to take advantage of if there's a lot of stuff going on. Every level starts out with a different layout of the map, with the placement of the obstacles, and the main effect of that is how you go about being aggressive right out of the hole, right in the beginning of the level. There is definitely some strategy there, because the levels are much easier to pass if you do them early. If you take advantage of the layout of the walls and just explosively enter the level, and don't let your opponents get like a foothold. Don't let them expand and become large. You got to get them early. If you miss that opportunity in the start of the level, it definitely transforms into more of like a conventional kind of competition, like a contest. I mean, it's just more rigmarole. And there's still an element of luck, even if you use kind of like the ideal method on a given level right out of the hole, you might not succeed in knocking them out, because they can be unpredictable, the AIs, and they can sacrifice and exit the board and be absent while you execute your technique, and it's non-trivial. But in the early levels, it tends to be easy. I should probably talk about that briefly. So when you're vulnerable to being eliminated, there's an alert. So if I enter the board right now, I'm absent. But if I enter next to my opponent with one tile, it beeps and flashes red. And I had a little bit of time before my opponent vanished me. So now I'm absent from the board again, and I can re-enter anywhere that's vacant, where these stars indicate. And if I make myself vulnerable again, in the early levels, the AI is so friendly that I generally will only get vanished. But it is very possible to get eliminated, even in the early levels, by playing them recklessly like this and just taking these chances. The real way to re-enter is to try and do it with leverage and like immediately expand your front. You can also do a technique I call sniping, where you immediately schedule like a take and a sacrifice in the same cell, like this. So it's a quick succession of left and right click. And you can still get eliminated this way, but your presence on the board is so brief that it can be a very effective technique to create some space for you. See, now I'm not so vulnerable. Orange could sacrifice and it wouldn't eliminate me. And it gives me a foothold of 2 or more with some leverage, so I can expand my front and try to eliminate them. But it's really only so effective in the early levels. In the later levels, sniping like that, you'll get caught and get eliminated, because the AIs detect it, and they'll just sacrifice when you're vulnerable in that brief period. So I didn't want to make this level or make this video very long. I think this is already covered enough. So I'm just gonna quit.